What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we get to talk about not one, but actually two Halloween games. Now, this has been talked about for a while. We were kind of leading up to something like this, and there's been a lot of talk. But now we get quite a bit of information. Two games, both being made by the same team, and the team that made Evil Dead, the game. This was something I was wondering, right? Like, leading into it, we've heard about a Friday the 13th game as well, that that's in the works. And, you always try to pick, or you think in your head, right? Like, well, who could do something like this, and in a good way, not in a negative way. And Evil Dead the game, to just get this out of the way early, really good. Honestly, I think it's one of the better asymmetrical, because it's just so different. You think of the Friday the 13th. I mean, look, they're all special, I guess, in their own way. Friday the 13th really, kind of showed that you could do it beyond Dead by Daylight and do it in a slightly different way. And, things like Evil Dead or Texas Chainsaw, I would say those are like the big three. Those are the ones that have really stood out. You got the Predators of the world and Killer Clowns. Again, they're all similar to a degree, but the ones that stand out to me really are, I'd say, Evil Dead, Friday the 13th for kind of popularizing it outside of Dead by Daylight, and then Texas Chainsaw, which I think also was kind of that more new age, let's do it, but let's do it slightly different, and it actually stuck around. So I think it's a great pick. It pretty much solidifies that Evil Dead the game is totally dead, which we kind of already knew. It's been on its way out for about a year now, so it's not super shocking. But let's go over, this came actually exclusively, IGN got the scoop, so let's go over what they say about this. So they say two new games based on the 1978 horror classic Halloween are in development at Boss Team Games, IGN can exclusively reveal. While details are limited, both games are apparently being developed in conjunction with the producers of the Halloween franchise. What's more, one of the games is being developed in Unreal Engine 5 and will include input from the original director, John Carpenter. And he says, as a huge gamer myself, which he is, I'm thrilled to help bring Michael Myers to life again in this game, and my hope is to scare you silly. And he also said who will be intimately involved with the development of the new project. According to the official release, the games will allow players to relive moments from the film and play as classic characters for one of the most iconic and important horror films of all time. The two new games are being developed in association with Compass International Pictures and further front with the Unreal Engine 5 project still early in development. And then just the end there, they talk about there was a Halloween game, I think, back in the 80s, and I don't think any of those games, and there was a Friday the 13th game back then as well, didn't really go over all that well. Pretty cool. The one question I have, I only have one, is what types of games are these going to be, right? So you got the one that sounds like, and even that one sounds kind of weird, but maybe in a good way, right? Reliving the movies, so being able to play as classic characters. One thing I would like is that both of these games not be multiplayer. One of them. You can have the other one. What I honestly think, and this is where the Evil Dead connection actually does come in, I would say, in a good way, right? So you think, all right, there's no way you're going to do a Halloween game and do two of them, and you're not going to have one be an asymmetrical game like Texas, like Ghostbusters, like Predator, like Killer Clown, all of these games. We've gotten 7 or 8 of them, right? There's no way that we don't get one of those for Halloween. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that, but at the same time, when you already have all of these games and then you do something with Michael Myers, are you really not going to have people play a game where you can be Michael Myers and then you could also be the survivors and kind of go back and forth? The thing that makes me optimistic is if you do an asymmetrical game, this is from one of, again, what I said in the beginning of the video, this is from one of those teams that I think are capable of doing something different. So it's not your run-of-the-mill. And look, there's really no bad one. There's some that are maybe, fine, right? But, you look at the Killer Clowns one that just came out. It is very much like Friday the 13th and Dead by Daylight, just kind of putting them together. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It doesn't stand out all that much. But, again, for me, Evil Dead absolutely does. Evil Dead is maybe, because Friday the 13th, and then you look at Texas Chainsaw, they are somewhat similar. Evil Dead is probably the most different of any of these games. Being able to play as the demons and floating around and getting basically currency in this upgrading type system. And then the survivors, they're kind of doing a little bit more of the run-of-the-mill, go here, find this thing. They remind me of the survivors of Friday the 13th. But the demon, the other side, is super different, super kind of wacky, but in a good way. So, again, I that's kind of where I stand on that. That I do think we're going to get one of those games from Halloween. But if you look at the portfolio of all of these games, these are probably the best people to work on it because they kind of give you something a little bit different. You could say, how different can it possibly be? Because you got a killer, you got survivors, right? But in terms of the whole, you can play as iconic, that sounds like a almost scene recreation, which Friday the 13th and subsequently like future games after did have things where you'd kind of relive. Well, it wasn't really reliving moments. It was more like there's scenarios, right? Friday the 13th had scenarios where you would be Jason and you would be told, okay, you have these two people, these two campers or counselors, right? And you have to do one thing with one and the other thing with the other, right? And you're kind of playing out a scene, and there's like checks, right? Like, did you do this accurately? Did you alert them and now you got to chase them? Okay, well, maybe you get deducted points. I'm not saying that's what this is, but that's definitely what this reminds me of, right? I can't, like, when I'm thinking about comparisons, I can't think of anything else. Except, of course, like, if you were to do an Until Dawn, if you were to tell, say, the first movie, Halloween, right? You tell the first movie and you do it as an Until Dawn thing, oh my God, you could play as all the different survivors. You can choose. You can do quick time events. I mean, I would love that. I really would. I mean, I've been pitching that for like a Scream game. I think that would be perfect for a Scream game. You answer the phone and you can answer different ways to Ghostface, etc. He can attack you. Maybe you can keep a character alive versus not. I think it would work really, really well. Just throwing it out there in case anybody wants to make a Scream game with me. But no, I mean, you could definitely go down that road. So, one of them, I think I'm just going to kind of default and say it will be an asymmetrical horror game, multiplayer game. The other one we'll kind of see, but like, could you go more single player? Again, I really would hope so. I don't want some sort. I don't even know how you would do that multiplayer though. That's the interesting thing. Like the John Carpenter one, and he says like scare you silly. Like the Friday the 13th game, I think can be scary. Like there is something terrifying at the beginning of a Friday the 13th match when you're scavenging, right? You're looking for the map, you're looking for the radio, and Jason teleports himself in your area. I mean, you're like 50-50 that you're screwed, right? There is a tenseness there. I don't even know if that's actually a word. You're tense. You're tense in that situation. It is scary. But it also has kind of like that comical feel because you're playing with other people. See, it's hard to be too afraid in an asymmetrical game. There is a little bit of fear. Like if you play Texas Chainsaw, it can get dark. It can get scary when you're locked in a basement with Leatherface. And, you know what I mean? There's some tense moments there as well. You can make people scared, but I just feel like because there's so much communication and sometimes the ability to fight back, that fear kind of goes away. So I guess to the John Carpenter quote, I wonder then, like, would it be a single-player game? Would it be more of like a horror game? Because you might lose some. Like, I don't know if you'd be able to scare people as much as you think you could if it's a multiplayer thing. I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. So we'll see, but it's an exciting day. Absolutely. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.